Talking with our friend John Keim here on the BetQL guest line. You can follow him at John_Keim, Keim. Do you go through the exercise of wins and losses at this point, or do you stay away from it?
I stay away from it only because because we haven't even, I think if we knew more about this team, it'd be easier to do that. But I have more questions about them than I do about the schedule, right? And I've also, you always learn with the schedule. I mean, let me say this. I do kind of go through that. I don't have to do it for, we used to have to, for ESPN, we'd always have to, predict a record or whatever. And, which I always, it's hard, but you do it for that purpose. Well, we don't have to do that now. So I kind of went through it quickly. But then it's I don't know enough about these guys. How long is it going to take for this offense to start to mesh? We had some questions like that last year, but now you have everything's new and you have a rookie quarterback. I don't know what that's going to look like initially. And so I think that's part of the hard part in trying to go game by game. The other thing is, too, I just remember, every year there are a couple of games where it's the game looks dramatically different, either because the team's playing better than you thought or the other team has injuries and it makes it look different. So, but yeah, I haven't quite done it to the level where it's okay, here's a win, here's a loss. I mean, you kind of do it okay, can you get to 7 or 8 wins? And then I say, well, we don't know enough about them to know what they really look like or what it's going to be like.
Yep. I think you need to know two levels, the immediate backup of the teams to understand what they could possibly do. You don't know that. And it's like we're just throwing out things.
Yes. And that's a good point. That's the other thing I was thinking about when you have these late buys. And again, just my wife hears all this stuff every in the mornings, and she probably just I don't know, I probably bore her sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I tune myself out, so she probably does too. But part of that is when you have those late buys, especially, you've got to have, and even in 17-game season, forgetting where your buy is at, you've got to have that depth more than ever. And so that's what I'm going to be curious to see is how good is the depth that they've built, because that's a huge key, because you're going to lose guys. And what's the drop off? That's going to be a big key for any team.
Well,
in addition to the quarterback play.
Totally. I was saying that a little while ago that, they signed a ton of veterans on one-year deals, largely to make themselves competitive this year because they recognize the lack of depth. But when you look at what they built with the Niners, it took them a few years, and then they were able to sustain injuries, fill in with free agency. We got to remind ourselves this is year one, and for all of the excitement right now, and there should be, and especially if the quarterback, maybe we should start here. What did you think of watching Jaden a little bit now, especially with the veterans, some 7-on-7? Obviously, there's no hitting, there's no pass rush, but he's been impressive.
I mean, yes, and I think as you have to what are the things you're looking for in that, right? And the footwork is really good. And you brought this up the other day when we were on the sidelines watching rookie camp, just how fluid he looks, right? And so when you're watching him in those footwork drills and just the way he gets his feet around, that's one of the things you watch. In the first 7-on-7, I'm watching okay, he's going through his progression here, and he goes, your feet are going with your eyes. That leads to accuracy. And we saw it on film, and you saw it at the things he's got a quick, compact release. Mm-hmm. And when people talk about arm talent, it's not about the strength of the arm. It's that kind of stuff. What is your release like, right? And, how quickly do you see it and you go? And is it boom, boom, right? Some quarterbacks, you might see it, you hesitate, then you go. That's not arm talent. But he has that. And so I think you see that. And I think the accuracy, and they're doing a lot of those drills throwing into the nets, and he's consistently the most accurate in those.
And he gets pissed off if he missed one, which I love.
Yes.
I love the competitiveness against himself.
Yes. And I think that's when you watch him play, you see that competitiveness. That's why and sometimes it can work against him with some of those hits he takes, but you see that with him. And I also think the other part you see and hear is you see the smile, constant smile. And that doesn't mean he takes things lightly. I just think it speaks to how relaxed I think he is in that environment. And then you hear the rookies talking about, Ben Sinnott talking about the personality and how they just, you gravitate toward that. And so those are all good things. And everything that you've heard about the kid has been pretty good.
Right.
And, it doesn't, Like, and you always qualify, because if you don't, then someone's going to come back and say, well, you guys said in May. Well, this is what we see right now. And yes, we don't know how it's all going to look like once it gets into a game, because then it depends on the offense around him, the players around him as well. But I will say the kid's off to a good start. I think they made the right pick. I don't think there's been any doubt about that at this point.
Well, there's
sure
a little bit of the last two first-round quarterbacks. Haskins, there were questions about who wanted him, frankly, right?
Correct.
And then he got to town, and there were questions about understanding the level of work it took to make it in the NFL.
Correct.
Go back to Robert before that. Robert immediately was played up for the cameras, the crowd. Like, one thing that has stood out to me about Jaden, just considering the past two first-round quarterbacks taken, not only is there not a lack of understanding about the work it required, the kid seems to want to do the work and double it. Like, he seems like a straight-up football rat.
Mm-hmm.
And then he doesn't seem to care at all about the cameras and all that. Like, he avoids landmines and did it really successfully over the last month.
Oh, when they ask questions, he answers the question that's going to please his team instead of ones that's going to agitate his team.
Well, and I also
a lot of guys don't stick with that.
Right.
Right. And I don't think there's anything. Nobody's saying it's fake, but I don't think it's like a rehearsed thing. I think it's who he is.
Yeah.
And that's what has jumped out, because every answer kind of becomes the same. Like, you're here to earn it. I haven't done anything, basically, is what he's saying. And like, he says all the right things, but I think it's genuine. And I think that, I would say this, that certainly sets him apart from some other quarterbacks I've covered. So
I'll say this, John, even if he said it because he was taught he had to say it, it's still I still like that better than the other people.
Correct. Right. No, because
other people they never learned it, must be, because they never said anything like that.
Right. And he's not coming here saying, I'm here to be the face of the franchise or whatever. And, I'll leave it at that. But that's he's not saying that stuff. He understands, you're here to play your role, whatever that role becomes. And I also, JP, to your point about football rap, that's one of the things that people who know, I talked to someone who knows him, has known him a long time. And he's like, he and his dad are football nerds. That's what they do. They study football. They've always done that. That's been their thing. And I think that's what you see. He seems to. So sometimes you might see pictures of him on social media, but I was talking to someone about that, and he's like, that's really the quarterback coaches who are working with him who post that stuff. He's not the one wanting to post that. I think that too, I would say, is a good sign, because, I think we've seen that doesn't always equate to success. And I think he's a guy that likes to put in the work. It's why he did that virtual reality stuff,
right,
and all that. And so I think all of that is really good. And that's the thing you heard about him throughout this process, is the work he puts in. And it's not about, running sprints and all that. The work is as much about learning defenses. Like, for a quarterback, it's, grinding the film and working on your game and trying to get better one thing that jumped out with people throughout their draft process was just the improvement he made from the pocket. But that came from, it wasn't just because, he played 5 years. It's because the work you put in to then improve. Just playing 5 years doesn't make you better in the pocket.
Totally.
Because yeah, right.
He improved every year over the 5 years.
He put the work in.
Exactly. And I think that's that's where, if you want to start with a quarterback, the traits are great. These guys all have traits, and not that the other ones didn't put in the work, because I think they did. But then you take the traits he has with the work, and that's why I think there's a lot of optimism about him.
Some of them didn't. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Oh, no, I'm talking about
you can say, I'm going to tell you, some of them didn't do a damn thing. All they cared about was the success.
No, I'm talking about in this draft. When you're comparing them to Drake May or Jay. But no, I would say, BMitch, you're right.
Yeah. There were some folks around here that didn't put the work in and were still celebrated by the previous owner. I think it's a very new day. You know what I mean? And I think
I do.
Dude, real quick, just because we haven't hit on it, and I don't know that we'll have a ton of time for it. Going into OTAs, looking at the roster, I thought adding a veteran receiver was very much on the radar. And then sure enough, yesterday they add a veteran receiver. What can you tell us about the move?
Damier Byrd, fast guy, small, experience with Kingsbury. He had 30, but that was like from 2019. Did not play in the league, or he was on teams last year, but I think it's just practice squad. So
small guy too.
Small guy, but speed, and so I think if you're going to try and spread the field, it's nice to have more speed, and we'll see. But I think, it's funny because with that, like, I'm really curious to see what Luke McCaffrey develops into. And let me go back. He did. But the other guy I'm going to go back to is Jahan Dotson. Like, I still think that kid can play. And,
agreed.
I think like 2 years ago, like, I loved watching his route running because he kept getting open. He didn't always get the ball, but he was getting open. And I think he's one of the guys that probably appreciates all these changes as much as anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Absolutely.
So, like, that's why, like, he's going to be one that I'm really like, what does he look like this year? Because we know what Terry is. We don't know what McCaffrey can become, but like Dodson's kind of like, there's been those snippets, but I think he can elevate.
Johnny, thanks for the time, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
And just so we're clear, so I can tweet it out, you had him at 15-2, right?
Yeah, with resting the starters the last 2 weeks. Yes.
Thanks, dude. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.